Hello YouTubers and Blender fans, welcome to another tutorial of the BlenderMechanic. Today we're gonna be setting our transformation properties of our spring, and so we can have that expand and contract with the movement of a push rod, as you've seen with our previous tutorials on the dynamics of the brake part assembly. Now the only difference of this that I've made since is I've joined our push rod and our clevis as one object, and it's very easy to do. All you do is select your push rod individually, then hit shift to select your clevis simultaneously, and then hit Control J for joining. So they are one object right now. I've called it the push rod as one object, and we're ready to start. So what you'll do here for transformation, you'll apply it, if you remember, like the previous tutorial, to the object that's receiving the effect. In this case it's our spring, so let's select it, go to your constraints tab over here, expand that and find your transformation right there. Alright, so now we've got all these settings. Simple. Your target will be the object that's applying the effect. In this case it's a push rod, so select push rod, and now down here we'll leave the rest as is. There's no vertex group, specific vertex group that we are focusing on. It's the entire push rod assembly. Now what's going to happen here is the push rod is moving. When it moves on its x-axis to your right here, we want the spring to contract as well. So your source, which is just push rod, is moving on the x-axis, so we will be focusing on location. It's gonna move. We'll be setting it here. Now your minimum setting will be the setting that it's set at currently. Now if we look at location, it's set at 9.025, so that's what we'll set minimum to, 9.025, and your maximum will be the maximum rotation of your slack adjuster, which is 30°. Now that is your maximum, which is at 11.572, so we'll set that at a maximum of 11.572, and now we're done. Next over here, this is the tricky part again. So this is the source's axis that causes effect to the object that's receiving the effects axis. So in this case, now what we've done when we created the spring initially, we've created it on its z-axis and since rotated it so we can get it in this position. But technically the z-axis of the spring specifically is this right here, the x. What that means is our pushrod x-axis, when it moves to your right, it's going to affect your z-axis over here of the spring. So what we'll have to do is we want to change this x for your pushrod x-axis movement, altering the z-axis of the spring, which is technically, like I've mentioned, when we created it on its z-axis, and since then we've been moving it and rotating it so it lies flat like this. Alright, so now we got that set. The next is our scale. When the pushrod moves on the x-axis, it affects the scale of the spring, so we're going to hit scale. Alright, let's go back there. Let's put our influence all the way down to 0, hit scale, and now we'll set our properties here. So again, the spring's z-axis is the one that we're interested in, so only this section, these two boxes over here. Now to determine the settings for that, we will look at the current position of the spring, which is on its z-axis at 0.727. All the other, if you note also, of the x and y axis, I guess scale properties are all at 0.727, and that's what we'll keep them at. So we'll put that at 0.727. Same thing with max 0.727, same thing with y 0.727, Same thing with its max, 0.727, and then the minimum for the Z is 0.727 as well, and then the maximum movement is how much this side will contract all the way to there. So let's go G, or let's go S for scale, and on the X, and we want it to contract all the way to about here as a max. Let me just scale it up. Yeah, there's no gaps. Okay, so now if you look at this reading over here in the scale property, it's 0.535, and that's what we'll put in here, 0.535. Hit enter, push up your influence all the way to the top, and test it now. So let's test this GX. I'll scale it down, GX, and when you move the push rod, the spring moves and the slack adjuster moves. Okay, perfect. So that's how we wanted it. That's all for this tutorial. We'll continue on in the next tutorials with the rest of this assembly. And yeah, that's it for now. If you any got comments, please leave it for me in the section below, and please subscribe, and thank you for watching.